how's everybody doing? So there is 8 people here. I can already tell you officially, there is more people here than what was at my last acoustic show in Macon. So, 7 people. All right. So happy Sunday, everybody. Hope y'all are doing good. Hope you guys got a beer. Gals got a beer. Everybody's in their pajama pants and all that good stuff. So, yeah. What is up, rain? Rain falling gently on the plain. Cool, man. It looks like... Of course I'm drinking a beer, man. It's Sunday. What else am I going to do? It's not like you guys have anywhere to be either. So thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. All right, everyone's in there. Yep, Kim's in her PJs. Look at Rain over there giving me the fist bump. This is nice, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Let's give it just an extra minute or a couple of minutes before I get kicking. So, do you have to read the book to participate? No, I'd prefer if you did, but you know, it's not really necessary. But I hope you all will read the book. So, anyway, the book's called Southeast of Heaven: A Metalhead's Journey, and if you haven't picked one up yet, let me know, because I have some here at the house that I was going to try to move at the original book reading, but because of the COVID-19, I had to cancel it, and hence why we're doing it here. So again, thank you all so much for, is there going to be a test? There will be a test, Luis. It will not be open book, and I'm going to be sending it to you randomly, and you have like 10 minutes to answer everything. So anyway, when is the large y'all are too fucking much. I'm telling you, y'all are great. So but anyway, well, thank you all again for tuning in. If you don't know me, my name's Don DeLamont, and I wrote a book called Southeast of Heaven: A Metalhead's Journey. You're probably going to notice me putting my hands in my pockets a lot and maybe even pacing a little bit. That's because I usually have a guitar and a band backing me up, and you know, I've got everything, you know, to hide behind, and now I just have this little thing to hide behind, and I feel totally naked. But luckily for you, I'm not actually naked. So anyway, so I want to give a big shout out to everybody and say hey. God, let's see, we got North Carolina in the house, we have Florida, we have South Carolina, we have Virginia, wow, we even have Sweden in here, so that's cool. So it looks like we've gone global, everybody. So anyway, welcome to Southeast of Heaven: A Metalhead's Journey. I'm going to start off by reading a couple of essays from the book, and please feel free after, I'll do 2 essays, and then after the second essay, we'll do a Q&A. So be thinking about any questions you have, either regarding the book, my story, or you know, anything that I may not talk about or whatever. So just feel free to ask. The audio book's coming soon. I'm still waiting on Morgan Freeman's contract, but as soon as that goes through, we'll get started. So, and I also know that there is a delay, so I'm going to give everybody time when it comes time to the Q&A to ask questions and get them out. So, how many? Y'all, Luis is not racist, by the way. He's a good guy. Anyway, cheers, everyone. All right, so I'm going to start off with an essay called "In the Beginning." So back in 1983, shit was very different. Postage was 20 cents, bread was 66 cents, and you could buy a fucking Big Mac for 95 cents. I was just another fat-ass kid with a bowl cut attending a Catholic school in New Orleans, Louisiana. Kids hated me. Never really quite figured out why, but it's always the fat kid who gets the shit end of the stick. I tried to fit in. I tried to convince kids that I liked Prince, that I thought Duran Duran was awesome, but I wasn't a good liar. I thought Culture Club had a few catchy songs and that ZZ Top was kind of cool, but it wasn't enough. I was that odd, fucked up puzzle piece, unable to fit in with the rest of them. After a while, I gave up trying and I just said, fuck it, and I went on about my life. Although I had 2 parents at home, a kid brother, and a room of my own, my life lacked any passion. I didn't have anything I could call my own. At school, I saw all these kids having fun with each other while I hid in the back of the schoolyard praying to God that they would not come over and beat the shit out of me for sheer enjoyment. This happened quite a bit. And like anything else, after a while, you get used to it. Oh, look, it's a Wednesday. Time to get myself pushed to the ground and be forced to kiss some asshole's shoe. Yeah, sounds like a lot of fun, huh? Stick with me, y'all. My life does get better, I promise. It's shit like this that can damn near break a kid. Even back then, it wasn't unheard of to read about some kid offing themselves because they couldn't take the unending crap that was being dealt to them daily. Not me, though. Something in me wanted to fight physically, mentally, and emotionally. I just knew there was something more out there, something I could identify with and call my own. Unfortunately, I didn't know what it was, so I endured the schoolyard. A year later, in 1984, I saw a video on Friday Night Videos. We didn't have cable yet, so MTV was not for me. But anyway, I saw a video for the song We're Not Gonna Take It by Twisted Sister. Twisted Sister. I had never seen anything like it before. They were insane looking, they were loud, they were obnoxious, and I fucking loved every second of it. That song in the video spoke to me. I couldn't believe my eyes or my ears. A bunch of old dudes who spoke for and to this 10-year-old kid. I felt like they were singing my life story back to me. I immediately ran out to Warehouse Records and Tapes and bought the cassette for Stay Hungry. I didn't know it then, but that moment marked the start of my journey. My mother was a hardworking lady. She worked at a daycare center in Metairie, Louisiana called Athenia Parkway. Don't bother looking for it, it's not there anymore. Anyway, they had an after-school program for older kids, and I would end up there every day after school. One day I was sitting at a table, and across the room was this overweight kid who didn't look much different from me. He had headphones on and was playing drums on his plastic school box. You remember those little plastic boxes you keep your pens and pencils in and erasers and shit? Yeah, so he was playing drums on that school box. I went over and I asked him what he was listening to. He says, Twisted Sister. I told him how much I loved them and introduced myself to him. He told me his name was Jimmy. Now Jimmy seemed like a cool kid and immediately asked me, so who else do you listen to besides Twisted Sister? I was honest. Man, whatever's on the radio. I like Bryan Adams and that band Toto seems kind of cool. Jimmy just laughed at me and said, man, you need to listen to some other bands. That day, we became the best of friends. Beyond our love for Twisted Sister and their vocalist Dee Snider, we had a lot in common. We went to different schools, but we were both the fat kid, outcasts who were looking for someone and something to latch onto. It seemed like Jimmy had it all figured out, impressing me with the list of bands he liked. Have you ever heard Motley Crue? How about Rat? Scorpions? Iron Maiden? I just shook my head, but I remember thinking, if Jimmy likes these bands, they must be cool. He invited me over to his house for a sleepover one weekend. I went over there and I brought along my best Transformers. I had the one that looked like a Walkman and it had the little tape that came out and turned into like a tiger or whatever. Anyway, Jimmy had Optimus Prime though, which was the shit at the time. Optimus Prime was the biggest of all the Transformers. We were hanging out in his room playing with our Transformers when I heard loud music coming from the room next door. What is that? I asked. That's my brother, Jay. Let's go see him. We knocked on his door and there he was. Long hair, muscle shirt, jeans, loud music blasting out of his stereo. I felt how Beavis and Butthead felt whenever Todd came around. Whoa, this dude is awesome. His room was covered in crazy posters: Twisted Sister, Iron Maiden, Scorpions, Black Sabbath, and some guy who called himself Dio. I was intrigued by the intricacy of all the band logos. The artwork was kind of intense, but it didn't scare me. It made me feel like I was seeing a side of something that had been hidden from me. Jay put on some albums for us. He played us Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue, and then Love It for Sting by the Scorpions. Then he played an album that would change my life forever: Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. I felt like a door to my soul had been opened. My heart raced, my blood seemed to pump faster, and I wanted more. Jay sent me home with some dubbed cassettes, planting the seed that would launch a 30-year journey into the world of heavy metal. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the new addition to our family, Ozzy Zig Posborn. That's his name. Obviously, he's the best dog in the fucking planet because he is sound asleep, passed out. He is the goodest boy ever. For those of you who don't know, we lost Cassie back in December, which broke our hearts, but we were ready now. And Ozzy just became a new addition to our family. This is his first week home, so everyone say hey to Ozzy. Ozzy really is super chill. Yes, he is super chill. Okay, I'm going to do another one for you guys. This one's called But Are They As Good as Tesla and Cinderella? One hot summer day back in 1989, I was thumbing through the local free paper when I saw an ad for one of my favorite bands, Tesla. They were playing at the Fox Theater with Great White and Kix. I just had to go. The problem was that I had no friends to go with. We had just moved to Georgia and school hadn't started. So my dad reluctantly stepped up to the plate, got us balcony tickets for the show, and we went. Tesla was a really special band to me. I absolutely loved their debut album, Mechanical Resonance, because it was so different. It wasn't the slick, polished, makeup-clad glam rock that was ruling the airwaves and MTV at the time. Tesla was this little band from California with a huge sound that was more reminiscent of backyard barbecues, bonfire parties, and good old gnarly, gritty rock and roll with a heavy metal twist. As much as I loved the debut, when the band released The Great Radio Controversy, I was over the moon. Track 1, Hang Tough, they have this great mellow breakdown after the lead guitar solo that still gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. The dynamics on this album were something that I hadn't heard a lot of, if at all. Tesla had elements of the greatest metal guitar duos, licks picking notes out of the sky, but then they'd bring it down with the acoustics and a more melodic approach on songs like Love Song and The Way It Is. All I knew was that this is a band that was something special, and I had to see them live. On July 30th, 1989, my dad and I rolled up to the Fox Theater for the show, and we made our way up to our seats. My dad bought an overpriced beer, which I bet back then was like $6 or so, and he bought me a Coke. We were both blown away by the beauty of the Fox Theater. I had never seen anything like it in my entire life. The opening band, Kix, took the stage, and my dad pretty much made fun of them the whole time. I thought they were just okay. Now, I can't remember who closed or opened the show, just that Great White and Tesla were co-headlining. For those of you that don't know what co-headlining is, it's, two bands were headlining, and every night they just switched positions, But what I do remember is that Great White was really good, but when Tesla hit the stage, I was blown out the back of the theater. Tesla came out guns blazing with Lady Luck from The Great Radio Controversy, and before I could even get my last cheer out, they were going straight into Hang Tough. I was so excited I just lost my mind. I looked over at my dad, who was clad in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts and cotton stuffed in his ears. He smiled and gave me a thumbs up. My dad never used teeth when he smiled. He always went. I can remember it as plain as day. Oops, I already said that. Oh, never mind. I can remember it as plain as day. When Tesla began getting better, my dad leaned into me and said, "This is probably the best band I've ever seen in concert. These boys are fantastic." I was so psyched that he was enjoying himself. He told me later that he loved the fact that not only were they great performers, but they had a lot of different ways of presenting their music. After they played Modern Day Cowboy, he said to me, "I doubt any band could do a better job than this." Just a few months later, and 2 days shy of my birthday, I still didn't have any friends that I felt comfortable going to shows with. On September 3rd, my dad once again seized the opportunity to take my kid brother and I to see Cinderella, White Lion, Warrant, and Tangier at Lakewood Amphitheater. I was so excited because I had seen Cinderella, and the last time I saw them was as the opening act for Judas Priest a year or so before. To see them as headliners was going to be a real thrill. My dad critiqued each of the bands. First up was Tangier. I had never heard of them and thought they were definitely great, definitely a Cinderella type of band, with their blues-infused hard rock. My dad commented, "These guys are really good. Their singer looks older than the other guys, but what a voice. I really like these guys. These guys rock. They should have played longer." My dad's snarky attitude made an appearance as Warrant took the stage. My dad said he thought that they were just flat out stupid, and even went as far as to say that they made Poison look like Mensa members. He said, "Is fuck the only word this guy knows? He must talk so much because their music is so terrible." He summed up their set by saying, "The announcer called them the horniest band in the world? More like the worst band in the world. These guys will never make it." It didn't get much better when White Lion came on. My dad said he thought they had great stage presence, but that Mike Tramp was a tone-deaf Fabio. "That guitar player is fabulous," he commented about Vito Bratta. "Why is he wasting his time in this crappy band? These guys are not much better than Warrant." When they covered Radar Love by Golden Earring, my dad said, "Wow, I thought I hated that song before, now I hate it even more." At this point, I was starting to get nervous about what he'd think of Cinderella. Because he loved Tesla so much, I knew that he would dig them. Cinderella began their set with Bad Seamstress Blues falling apart at the seams, and when it kicked in, a curtain just dropped, exposing a huge stage full of stairs, ramps, and lights. My dad looked over at me and said, "Now this is some good stuff." Cinderella played a great selection of material from their 2 albums, as I'd hoped they would, and my dad was really enjoying himself. Night Songs was a big hit with him because it said it reminded him of vampires. My dad was really into vampires, so he really dug it. Are you even a tone-deaf Fabio, bro? When Cinderella went into Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, Tom Kiefer descended from the lighting truss on a white baby grand piano. My dad thought this was one of the coolest things he had ever said, asking me wonderingly, "How can they top this?" Coming Home and Gypsy Road he loved. He told me he thought Shake Me was a pretty silly song, but that it was still enjoyable. During Shake Me, though, these 3 girls were standing on their seats in front of us. They all lifted their shirts, flashing their bare breasts at the band. My dad looked at them, then he looked at me, and he said, "Your mother doesn't need to know every detail about what went on here, okay?" He sipped his overpriced draft beer. Score 1 for Pops. When Cinderella returned for their encore of Long Cold Winter, artificial snow bathed in purple lights fell from the covered area of the amphitheater. The band delivered what is still my favorite Cinderella show to date. My dad's mouth was open with astonishment. He was so fixated on the music, the snow, and the band that he didn't say a word until after the song was over. When it was over, he proclaimed, "Now that is something that I don't think anyone could top. That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen." From then on, whenever I came home from a show, my dad would ask, "So how was the show?" If I said it was awesome, he would quickly reply, "Yeah, but were they as good as Tesla or Cinderella?" Before my father passed away in 2012, he had to spend some time in the hospital, which gave us time to talk and reminisce, including about these shows. He was so impressed that both bands were still around. I really wish he could have lived long enough to see me interview Tom Kiefer twice and to eventually become close friends with Jeff Keith of Tesla. I saw Tesla recently, and while sitting backstage with Jeff Keith, I told him this story. When I finished, he let out the heartiest laughs. He said, Don, my boy. Don, buddy. I bet you anything your dad is with us right now. So if you ever met Jeff Keith, that's similar to what he sounds like. But anyway. Don, buddy. I bet you anything your dad is with us right now. I smiled for a brief moment. I liked the thought of him being there, grinning with pride that I was hanging out with one of the bands he thought to be the best of the best, and that they seemed to respect me and what I do as much as I respect them. Thank you. All right, so why don't we do some Q&A here? Let's see, there's 10 people in here. Why don't we do some questions? And I'll answer any questions you guys have, so feel free to shoot away. I love it that my wife chimed in with the first question. So, what was the hardest part of writing the book? Oh, I think the hardest part about writing the book, I think that the hardest part of writing the book was kind of emotionally being reminded of so many stories that I had. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, obviously, but the thing that brought my father and I together was music. And whereas like some fathers and their sons could bond over throwing a ball, throwing a football, actually talking to each other, it was music that pretty much was the bond between my dad and I. So, listening to music together, every now and then going to a concert together, that was our bond. And so it was kind of hard to relive those moments because it kind of reminded me of the dysfunctional relationship that we had. But at the same time, it made me very happy. And I think the second hardest part was, actually just compiling it all and just wondering if this was going to be anything people were going to want to read. So I hope that answered the question. So anyway, let's see. When you started writing this book, did you plan to make your dad such an important part of the book? You know what? I really didn't. And it wasn't until I started to compile all these essays that I had written and started writing new ones that I realized that my dad was a bigger part of my journey than I remembered. And it actually did remind me that while there was a fair amount of dysfunction in our relationship, that there was a lot in there. My dad allowed me to be myself. When I wanted to play the guitar, he bought me a guitar. When I wanted to grow my hair, he said, grow it to your ass as long as you keep it shampooed and clean. So, so he kind of accidentally became a big part of the book, but, is a huge part of my journey and my story. Why do you hate hummus? How? I like hummus now. But when you're a 21-year-old guy who is pretty much used to eating McDonald's and Applebee's hamburgers and drinking Bud Light, hummus is a little off your palate. So I love hummus now. Have I interviewed old James? Mary, I had just talked to Brian, your son, and my kid brother, bassist singer, and we are going to do a podcast together soon. What is the heaviest band your dad liked? So, my dad thought Metallica's Master of Puppets was a really cool record. And he heard me listening to it one time, and he asked to see the lyrics. And I remember my dad saying, I can't really understand what this guy is saying, but he must be saying something very important because he sounds so angry. And my dad read the lyrics to the album, Master of Puppets, and said, I could read these alone without the music. So, I'd say Metallica was probably the heaviest band he respected. How many years have I been writing this book? Well, some of the essays are probably 7 years old or so, maybe 8 years old. I pulled those essays and I rewrote them in my current voice, who I was inspired to do so by my good friend Catherine Turman, who is a writer and one of my favorite music journalists out of New York City. And that's why I did that. And it took me a little while. Once I pulled those essays and rewrote them, and then I started writing new essays, it was probably about a year. So it took me, I'd say, about a year or so to do all the writing and compile it. Okay. How do I not fanboy out with some of the bands that have had an influence on me? Well, honestly, I think that the easiest way, the reason why I don't fanboy out is because once I talk to these people, it's just that I'm talking to a person. They call me on the phone to do an interview, or I do an interview with them backstage, and we're just sitting down. We're having a beer. And once I get the kind of nervousness out of my system, once I sit down with them, they're not unattainable to me. They're just people. They're a person who is a professional musician, someone that I respect, and someone that I want to get to know a lot of. And so that kind of keeps you from being, a total fanboy. Even though deep down inside, my 13-year-old self was going, "Oh my God, you're talking to Jeff Tate on the phone. How fucking cool is this?" But then all of a sudden, me and Jeff Tate are talking about, literally, like talking about the weather, talking about the political situation in the United States, just like I would talk to any of you while sitting down and having a beer. So I think it's just being in that space, being in that situation that kind of takes the fanboyness out of it and allows me to just be on a level with them. And I think that by also not being such a fanboy is what kind of opens up the room for them and makes them feel comfortable. So that's it, pretty much. So, okay, so actually I'm going to read another, cause I see there's some more questions to be answered. I'm going to answer those in just a little bit. And so do y'all want me to keep answering questions right now, or do you want me to read another essay and then answer the rest of them? I'm going to let you guys tell me what you want. Kristen, you can get it from me, actually. If you want to send me a message on Facebook, the book is $15, which also covers shipping, and I'll mail it right to your house. So if you want one, just send me a message on Facebook and we'll connect. Kim wants me to read the Scorpions chapter. I can't read them all to you, kids. So, hey. The Scorpions chapter, if you want to read it, you'll have to buy the book. Can't give it all to you. All right, so anyway, this next, let me see. Read, either way is good. Read. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna read another essay, and then I'll go back and do some more questions. So please keep thinking about what you'd like to ask. All right, so this next essay I'm going to dedicate to my friend Jacob, who was one of the people who loved this story the most and actually inspired me to write this story as part of the book, because it was really just a dinner conversation one night, and it's a story I thought would make a great story for the book. So this story is called Murder in the Front Row. You can only begin to imagine the level let me try that again. You can only imagine the level of excitement that comes with being in the front row of a show by your favorite band. Now, I'm not talking about front row seats at some posh, air-conditioned theater where you're taking in a nice evening of music. I'm talking about general admission, standing room only shows where you queue up at line at 3 o'clock p.m. when the doors to the shitty armpit taint of a club don't open until 7 p.m. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. I've been there many times in my youth. The doors open and you run faster than you ever have to secure your spot right up front. It's also important to make sure you're on the correct side of the stage for the band you're seeing. For instance, if you're going to see GWAR and you want to be on Ballsack, the Jaws of Death side, you need to be pressed up against the front of the stage on the right. Now, if you're going to go see Megadeth and you want to heckle Dave Mustaine with hopes that he'll say something witty and toss your ass out, you need to be center stage. Get it? Okay. So countless times in my youth, I was that person. I needed to be up front for every fucking show I went to. Faster Pussycat, Ugly Kid Joe, Saigon Kick, Testament, Exodus, GWAR. I wanted to be right up there on the front line. The weight of anywhere from 300 to 1,000 people pushing into you as you brace yourself against the barricades, praying you won't crack or break a rib. The feeling of not being able to breathe or move an inch, even when you're tired, getting booted in the head by the Doc Martin wearing crowd surfer, getting beer thrown on you, and loving every minute of it, was something that made up a huge bit of my concert experience. There's a certain kind of magic and energy that takes place right up against the stage. Unless you've lived it, you probably wouldn't understand it. But I'm sure it's the same case with whether or not you're seeing a pop band, a country artist, or your favorite metal band. There's this connection with the group that you just don't get from being far away. Locking eyes with the singer and having him or her put the mic in your face to sing. Fist bumping the bassist, getting a pick from the guitarist, just being a part of the fuel that adds to the fire. You help the band give the best, very best show they can give to the rest of the room. Now, I've had some great times up front, and I've had some pretty harsh and brutal times too. I got a black eye while at Dangerous Toys and Junkyard show. I got booted in the head by a crowd surfer while seeing NoFX. And I got my leg peed on, yes, real piss, while up front at a Black Crowes show. But the worst thing that ever happened was being completely robbed of my front row spot at a Ramones show in 1992. The Ramones were playing the International Ballroom in Atlanta, Georgia. The band was touring for their Mondo Bizarro album, and I remember it like it was yesterday. They were touring with some shitty fucking band called Overwhelming Colorfast and Social Distortion, who I was actually looking forward to seeing. A couple friends and I arrived at the venue at 2 in the afternoon. We were easily the 5th, 6th, and 7th people in line. We were destined to be right up in front of Joey Ramone. Nothing was going to stop us. As the hours passed, the line got longer and longer. And the minute the doors opened, we booked it across the huge-ass warehouse and secured our places against the barricade, front and center, just as planned. We were pumped as fuck because there we were, front row and center, right where Joey Ramone would be. The first band, Overwhelming Colorfast, went on, and everyone pretty much just stood there, with their arms locked. You ever done that? Just stay there with their arms folded. Like, if you try to picture that kid who's sitting down in Spinal Tap and giving them thumbs down during Jazz Odyssey. Yeah, that kid. That was pretty much everyone in the room. The next band up was Social Distortion. Social Distortion is this great band that mixes rockabilly, punk rock, and 50s tinged rock and roll. They had such a unique sound for the time, and I loved what they were doing. I had never seen anything like it before. But I had their album Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell, so I was pumped to see them. They came out and they opened with Cold Feelings, and all of a sudden, things got just a little bit rougher. The crowd was pushing. I could feel my chest getting tight, but the three of us stuck together and we held our own. By the end of their set, I was exhausted, but we had made it. The Ramones were up next, and Joey Ramone was going to be right in front of me. They came out after their traditional The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly taped intro and slammed right into Durango 95. This is when shit started to get real. I could literally feel my ribs pressed up against the barricade. I could barely breathe, and I was loving it. I was holding on for dear life when suddenly I saw my two buddies get swept out of their front row positions like someone being dragged out to sea by a powerful current. I held my ground until the chant of "Lobotomy! Lobotomy!" which started Teenage Lobotomy. As the band kicked in, the people behind me literally lifted my fat ass off the ground and flipped me over the barricade. So what does this mean, you ask? Well, when this happens, security escorts you to the end of the line, the end of the barricade, and to the back of the International Ballroom you go unless you want to fight your way back up front. Eventually, my buddies ended up with me at the back of the room, and by the time we collected ourselves, the Ramones were on their 7th song. We looked like we had just been roughed up by a Major League Football team. I think I fucked that up because, I don't know anything about sports. Is there such thing as a Major League Football team? I know it was Major League Baseball. But anyway, we laughed it off and we continued to stand in the back where it was safe and roomy. And we enjoyed my all-time favorite Ramones show. After that show, I started to give up my place in the front row to a newer generation of people to experience and live. Every now and then, if it's a small, sparsely attended club show, I'll be right up front banging it out with the band. But these days, you can find me in the dad section at the back of the club. Me and a friend hanging back, drinking a cold PBR or Miller Lite Tall Boy, enjoying the show and appreciating those folks up front. I know what it's like to be up there. It's exciting, it's painful, and it's fun as all fuck. I also know that it's those kids getting murdered in the front row while the band plays who are setting the tone, giving the band the energy and drive to put on the best fucking show they can for those of us in the back who once braved the front row like they are. We may be older and hanging in the back, but it doesn't make us any lesser fans. We just prefer to get home after a concert without a cracked rib, bloody nose, or someone else's piss on our jeans. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to answer some more questions here. All right, so Kim asked, what are your favorite side projects and solo projects? What are your least favorite? Okay, I know what you're asking now. Okay. One of my favorite side projects of all time was, let's see, I really liked when Dee Snider broke off from, well, actually, when Dee Snider broke off after Twisted Sister split up and he did Widowmaker. That was a huge one for me. I loved Widowmaker. I loved their first couple out, their first out. I think they only had 2 records. So I really liked those albums. And I also liked his his pre-Widowmaker band, which was called Desperado, who had Bernie Torme on guitar and Clive Burr, who used to play in Iron Maiden, on the drums. That was a badass band. If you haven't heard them, look them up. I really liked Don Dokken's solo album, Up From the Ashes. I thought that was actually better than anything that Dokken ever did. I know that's probably sacrilegious, but I really liked that. My least favorite side project? That's a tough one. I don't know. I might have to get back to you on that one because all I can really think about, I'm unusually positive today. Really, all I can think of is the ones that I do like. So I'll have to go back to that one and think a little more. That was actually a really good one. Let's see. You are courageous to revisit all of the emotions surrounding your dad. Keep the best memories. Thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate that. That was very kind of you to say. Uh, Kim wants me to do my Klaus Meine imitation. Oh man. Is James here? James Hines? Is James here? Because James has heard my Klaus Meine impression, and it's really bad. But actually, my wife will not allow me to do accents because she says I do horrible accents. But I'm going to do it anyway since somebody asked. So I remember when the Scorpions played here in Atlanta, and I saw them on the what was it, the Crazy World tour, and it was like right before they did Big City Nights. And hold on, come on, Ozzy, couch. Oh, Ozzy's being a good boy. Good boy. You're good. So anyway, Klaus Meine, he's checking out the audience, and he goes, "Atlanta, are you ready for the Big City Nights?" Something like that, So anyway, that's my Klaus Meine imitation. Okay, Luis wanted to know what my top 5 rock books are. Probably Louder Than Hell, An Oral History of Heavy Metal. I really like David Crosby's autobiography. I think it's I forgot what it's called. It's called Since Then. Another one of my favorite books is Chuck Klosterman's Fargo, Rock City, who he was actually a huge influence on me to actually want to be a writer like this, or to even consider writing a book. I'm actually looking at my bookcase right now. David Lee Roth's Crazy from the Heat, one of the greatest autobiographies ever written, ever, hands down, one of the greatest. I think my other favorite rock book would probably have to be, I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, probably, you had to limit me to 5, didn't you? I'd probably say Paul Stanley's autobiography that came out a couple of years ago. That's a fucking fantastic book. I absolutely love that. So anyway, do you think you'll ever make up with Sebastian Bach? Message him on Facebook and ask him. Although he might only know me by Zachariah Harris. That's another long story. Okay. Let me see. Luis, you can read the book and imagine I'm whispering into your ear all you want. You can come and get him. Come on, go. Ozzy Zig's got to go potty. So anyway, let me see. Hey Laura, this is Laura from Electric Citizen hanging out. One of my favorite bands, one of my favorite current bands. Absolutely love them. Let me see what else it says. What else we have here. Sorry if this is a repeat question, but what was your first concert and how old were you? I haven't had the chance to read your book yet. So my first concert was the Monkees, Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, Herman's Hermits and the Grassroots, and that was like in early '85, I think. And yeah. So that was my first concert. It was either '85 or I think it was '85. I'm a hard person to ask these questions to because it's been so long. Mike Fortin said he loves Power Station. Kim loves, oh yes, Adrenaline Mob. That is a horrible side project. Terrible. Fucking, I can't believe Russell Allen from Symphony X even did that. Let's see. What page are we on the book? Just tuned in. Taxi, we are actually, I did 3 essays so far, and I'm about to do one more in a little bit, unless you guys want to hear an extra one. I got a jam, buddy. Great Q&A. Thanks, Kim. Hope you appreciate it. Who's on the couch behind me? It was Ozzy Zig Posborn, but Ozzy Zig had to go to the bathroom, so he is not here. So he might have been pissed that he couldn't have a beer. But anyway. So does anybody have any more questions? Would you guys like to hear another essay? And then maybe ask some more questions? This is your thing too. So just let me know what you guys would like. If y'all want another one, just let me know. All right. Got 2 thumbs up. Who would play me in the movie version? Seth Rogen. Easy. Either Seth Rogen or Jack Black. Yeah. I think Seth Rogen or Jack Black. John, I tend to have that effect on dogs, man, so it's all good. That's a good question, Louise. Who would play me in a bike? Yeah, I'm going to have to say Jack Black or Seth Rogen, whichever one's available. All right, I'm going to read another essay for you guys. So think of some questions that you'd like to ask, or you can even just start typing them, and I'll get to them at the end of this essay. And then we'll sign out. All right, so this one's called The Satanic Panic. In the 1980s, I was a full-blown metalhead. Studded bracelets, a denim jacket full of buttons, and a Metallica Ride the Lightning patch. I wore Judas Priest t-shirts, Iron Maiden shirts, Grim Reaper shirts, and I even had a Metallica shirt featuring a toilet with a hand coming out of it holding a knife and reading "Metal Up Your Ass." Were my parents worried about me? Not at all, but I was forbidden to wear that Metallica shirt around my grandmother. The 80s were an odd time for hard rock and metal music. Just like me, kids all over the world were listening to this incredible music that made us feel like we weren't alone and could rise above the shit going on in our lives. But at some point in the game, the music became an enemy of the state. Some of it was even deemed lethal and harmful. A few even believed that it might open a door to the souls of young children and allow Satan to enter them and cause them to do terrible things. Yes, and by terrible things, I mean smoke cigarettes, stay in their rooms reading magazines, and worst of all, having a good fucking time. An army of bored housewives in Washington, led by Tipper Gore, assembled to form the Parents Music Resource Committee, also known as the PMRC. And everyone from Madonna to Wasp was on their shit list. In a nutshell, the PMRC deemed certain music to be unsuitable for children, and the organization succeeded in having a law passed that any recorded materials that didn't meet their criteria of what was good and wholesome got a sticker slapped on the cover that read, "Parental Advisory, Explicit Lyrics." Idiots, didn't they know that would make us want to listen even more? I mean, I remember when I was a kid in a convenience store, and on the top shelf would be the nudie mags. They always had the cover blacked out, except for the cover girl's face and the magazine title. All I ever wanted was to see what the fuck was under that black bar. I mean, I wasn't stupid. I knew it was bare breasts, but blocking it out made me want to see it that much more. Well, that's the effect the parental advisory stickers had. When you tell a kid they can't have something, listen to something, or see something, chances are they will make sure they can by any means necessary. At some point, the issue with heavy metal music shifted from being just obscene to being the music of the devil himself, fueling the satanic panic. And no surprise, my Catholic school bought it. The nuns and teachers were urging parents to keep their kids away from this sinful and rebellious music sweeping over the entire nation. I mean, consider their evil names: Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Twisted Sister, and WASP, which, in case you don't know, stands for We Are Sexual Perverts. I was like metalheads. It was like metalheads were on the highway to hell, a path to eternal damnation. And if we owned Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue or See You in Hell by Grim Reaper, God was going to bitch slap us from the pearly gates straight to the bowels of hell. It got worse when parents started blaming the music when kids committed suicide. instead of taking responsibility and not paying attention to the emotional and mental state of their kids. In 1984, John Daniel McCollum's family sued Ozzy Osbourne because they believed that their son killed himself because of the song Suicide Solution. Then there was the 1985 suicide pact of Raymond Belknap and James Vance that the families blamed on Judas Priest's song Better by You, Better Than Me from the Stained Class album. In October of 1988, journalist Geraldo Rivera compiled all these stories along with appearances from professed satanic murderers, leaders of the Satanic Church and the Temple of Set, and supposed Satanism experts for television broadcast called Satanism, Exploring Satan's Underground. I vividly remember a note being sent home to our parents, urging them to watch this special with us. My dad sat me down and said, "Geraldo is a nutcase, but we'll watch his dumb show." Luckily, my parents didn't buy into it and said that while they were sad those kids killed themselves, it's likely that they were addicted to drugs or that they were just crazy. Mental health wasn't talked about in my family, even though I come from a line of bipolar alcoholics. As for me, this was my first introduction to King Diamond, so if anything, I have Geraldo to thank for that. After the show was over, we sat around and the three of us had a cool conversation. My dad said, "Donald," that's what he called me, Donald. Yeah, that's my name. "I have no problem with you listening to any of this music. All I ask is that you bring it to me when you buy it, and let's talk about it together and see if there's anything you have questions about." From that point on, my dad would check in with me about what I was listening to. He would ask me things like, "Does this music make you feel something? Does it make you want to do things? Does it make you mad? Happy?" Usually my answer was, "I like it because it's loud and fun to listen to. The artwork is awesome. They have cool stages at their concerts." Well, that was good enough for him, so my continuing journey as a metalhead pretty much went uninterrupted until I bought the debut album from Wasp. That's another story I'll get to later. If you want to read it, read the book. If y'all remember that, that's a 80s commercial. The Satanic Panic and aftermath of the Geraldo show was pretty fucking crazy. Kids I knew were forbidden to listen to heavy metal music. They had to burn their shirts, get rid of all their albums. It was insane. And it just wasn't the adults. The media brainwashing got to some of the kids. The one that shocked me the most was Jimmy, the kid who got me into metal. He burned all his records in the fear that he would be damned to hell if he continued to listen to them. He even stopped talking to me in case my evil was contagious. Luckily, I still had one friend, Mike. Hey Mike, if you're there, wasn't moved by any of it. Our folks continued to let us listen to heavy metal music, and guess what? We didn't get into drugs yet. I mean, we were 12. We didn't drink booze yet. Again, only 12. We didn't kill ourselves, and we didn't kill anyone else or any small animals. We maintained decent grades, and we managed to be good kids. We grew up to be somewhat respectable adults and contributed what we could to society in a positive way. The Satanic Panic very well could have cost me my ability to freely listen to the music that I had. Freely listen to the music had I not had parents who supported freedom of speech. But luckily, they knew it was nothing more than a scare tactic. And to be honest, and I'm sure this will piss Tipper Gore off, but hard rock and metal music did far more good than bad in my personal life. It opened the door to conversations with my dad. It made me learn not to take everything so literally. It's just fucking music. Whether or not these guys were truly Satanists or not, their end game was to entertain. And I was pretty fucking entertained. And these acts, and because acts like Dio and Twisted Sister inspired a lost generation, I felt less alone and less misunderstood. Finally, it made me aware of the hypocrisy of organized religions, the general public, and the media. They were casting stones and conducting witch hunts while living in lavish homes, having affairs with porn stars, molesting children, and living up to their ears in crooked politics. If the Satanic Panic did anything for me, it made me love heavy metal music even more, and made me more afraid of the ones who were fighting so hard to stop us from listening to it. I was, and I still am, way less scared of King Diamond than I am of Geraldo Rivera. All right. That was the last essay. Let me see. Who would watch that movie? John, you know you would watch it, dude. Lily, have I seen Queensryche with Todd Latour? Yes, I have, and to be honest, it was one of the most absolutely dull experiences of my entire life. I'm really not a Todd Latour fan, but I did go to the show with a very open mind, and I was not impressed in the least, to be honest. So, you know, I'm a Tate guy, so I always will be, tried and true. I gave the guy a chance. He sounded good. He sounded really good, Latour did, but just wasn't that exciting. I didn't get a whole lot of feeling out of that show. On the first listen of Number of the Beast, was there a specific song that you really connected with? I remember Children of the Damned was a song, and I think the reason why it connected with me was because it was this weird, it sounded kind of like a ballad, like it was slow, but it was very dark, and the lyrics were, he's walking like a dead man, just like crazy lyrics and just so dark and intense. I actually just remember also thinking too that Iron Maiden's songs a lot of times sounded like the artwork, which is kind of weird, but a lot of those songs that are on that album to me were synonymous with the album cover for Number of the Beast. So yes, I'd have to say probably Children of the Damned. Let me see. Mike said, maybe. Have I seen the band Threshold? Have you been able to attend any Prog Power shows? Lily, I have not attended any Prog Power shows, and there's actually a story behind that that's kind of a long story. Maybe I'll talk about it in the next book, I don't know, but anyway, in a nutshell, the Prog Power people do not like me at all. They pretty much hate me, and I'm pretty proud of that. So anyway, does anybody else have any questions at all? Do you have any questions? Would you like another essay? What would you guys like, if anything? I'm going to step away for a quick second. Just hold on. If you guys got questions, ask away, and I'll be right back. Just give me a quick second. What song? Okay, let's see. This is from Taxi. So anybody who doesn't know, Taxi Haskell is one of the people that was a part of my journey growing up as a kid. As a young person learning to play music in a band and hitting the clubs, Taxi was in a band called Smartass, who was one of my favorite bands. And anyway, so Taxi asked, what song did you learn on bass that convinced you that you could do this? Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones. Blitzkrieg Bop. That was the one. I remember listening to that song. I had Ramones Mania, and I was in 10th grade, and my brother had got a bass. I'd been playing guitar for maybe a year and a half at that time, 2 years maybe tops, and my brother got a bass guitar for his birthday because he thought he wanted to play bass and ended up not playing it. So I ended up taking it up. And I remember playing along with Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones. And I figured it out. And because I knew my chords on the guitar, I kind of was able to figure out the notes on the bass. And then I just kind of fell in love with playing bass after that. And I was a bass player from probably 1990 to 1995. So it wasn't very long, but it felt like a fucking lifetime, to be honest. But anyway. Let me see. See, is Taxi still here? If Taxi's still here, I'm going to close out with this essay. But I need to make sure he's still here. If he's not here, I'll do the Dio essay. Okay, Taxi's here. Okay, so I'm going to close out with this. So this one is for Taxi Haskell. And I'm going to have to read it out of the book. So this is what the book looks like, folks. Southeast of Heaven, A Metalhead's Journey by me, Don DeLamont. And it's a pretty book. My wife did an excellent job doing the artistic layout of the book. My good friend Tommy did the incredible artwork here. And, you know, so a lot of great people were involved in this with me. So I'm going to close out by reading an essay called Start Your Own Damn Band, Part 2. Rachel's Dead. Part 1 obviously comes before this, but you can read it in the book. Soon reality set in, and we realized that if we wanted to go someplace with our music, Gutter Slut needed to step it up. We unanimously agreed that we wanted to be a metal band. I didn't have the confidence to be a metal guitarist, so I decided I would play bass and we'd find a guitarist who could complete our vision. After jamming with a few people to no avail, we were introduced to a friend of a friend of a friend who supposedly was an awesome guitarist. He was a couple of years older than us, and honestly, he wasn't great. But he was way better than me, so he got the gig. And besides, he looked metal as fuck with his leather jacket and waist-length long hair. We were a band of merry men, a drummer who kept time like a clock with a dying battery, a guitarist who often soloed out of key, a decent singer, and a failed guitarist turned bassist. We were an honest-to-goodness metal band. We decided to put our punk roots and the Gutter Slut name to rest and come up with a new band name. We started throwing ideas around. Midnight Knock, Sledgehammer, Narcolepsy. Perfect. Name our band after a medical condition in which a person randomly falls asleep for no fucking reason. Then one night I was listening to Doing the Nasty by Slick Toxic. As the last song played, I picked up the CD case and read the song titles. The last song, an instrumental, was called Rachel's Dead. I thought that name sounded awesome as fuck. I brought it to the band and they loved it. We changed the spelling to Rachel's Dead, Rachales, so Slick Toxic wouldn't sue us. like we thought we'd ever be big enough for them to actually know we existed. We also loved it because our singer's girlfriend name was Rachel, and we hated her more than split pea soup, so it was a win-win. Years later, I would become good friends with Slick Toxic guitarist Kevin Gale, and he told me that it was cool as fuck that we named our band after one of their songs. Note that he didn't offer his opinions on the music. Insert laughter here. People sometimes say that your band's first show is your best show. This definitely wasn't the case for Rachel's Dead. We played on, I think, a Thursday night, and my parents came along with maybe 10 others. After our show, I asked my dad what he thought, and he said, "You guys are terrible, but you're better than Gutter Slut. Besides, you were having fun up there and having the time of your life, and I'm sure you will get better. Just keep having fun." That was the most my dad had said to me in a long time, and that has stayed with me to this day. Just keep having fun. That's what it's all about. You can be the best band in the world, a problem we would never have, but if you weren't having fun, what was the point? We did get better. Not a ton better, but better. I mean, we didn't get amazing, but if we were at a 3 when we started, we were a solid 6.5 when I quit the band. Okay, maybe a 6. Either way, we played our asses off. We played every all-ages metal dive club in Atlanta that we could. The Rec Room, Somber Reptile, PJ's Nest, and even played the prestigious and now legendary Masquerade on a Thursday night to 20 people. We played with bands like Rumblefish, Crawlspace, Smartass, Oliver Tricks, and Stuck Mojo, and we had a great time. We learned a lot by watching these bands, so we looked up to them as seasoned professionals. Some bands weren't so cool to play with. One in particular I remember was a band called 21 Down. They were a local band whose members probably changed your car's oil during the day, but were pretentious fucks who acted like they were headlining an arena show. One night we were opening for them at the Rec Room, and after our set I had to take a leak. At the old Rec Room, the guys' bathroom was on the side of the stage. I was on my way to go to the bathroom, and some big guy, probably one of their friends, stopped me and said, "You'll have to wait because 21 Down is getting ready." I politely pushed past him and entered the restroom to take a leak while the guys from 21 Down primped in the mirrors for all 30 of their fans. After this happened, I went back and told my band. Being the obnoxious kids that we were, we decided that we needed to find a way to knock them off their high horses. They had these coasters that looked like records, and they had their own phone number on them. Pre-website days, folks. I can't remember the number exactly, but let's just say it was 555 down. We each took a stack of coasters from the bar, and with Sharpies, we changed the number to 555 doo-doo. We started handing them out around the room and tossed some up on stage. "Who the fuck did this, man?" says the singer. We just laughed and left the venue. Damn, we were jerky kids. We were significantly younger than the bands we were playing with, but they were totally cool going into Big Brother mode with me. While my singer was out fucking his girlfriend in the car and my drummer and guitarist were playing video games, I was hanging out with these guys who seemed to have their shit together. Guys like Bones from Stuck Mojo, Rich from Oliver Tricks. I'd ask them about booking, about who to trust, who not to trust, how much money a band should make, etc. I would talk to the sound guy, the door guy, and even Toe, the owner of the Rec Room, asking business questions and about the best ways to advertise shows. I was young, and I was soaking it all up like a sponge. Taxi Haskell from Smartass was one of the coolest guys in the scene. He used to ruffle my hair whenever he'd see me, and always had something positive to say. I was a huge fan of Smartass, so that was really cool. I remember running into Taxi at some amphitheater show. I can't remember which show, but I was chilling by myself sitting on a bench when he walked by and said, "Don!" I was shocked, but stoked that he remembered my name. We talked a little bit and he told me, "Man, you know what I like about your band? You guys have heart and you're not jaded. Yet." We talked a bit longer, shook hands, and he walked off with some hot woman. There was some foreshadowing in that conversation. For 2 years, Rachel's Dead would rehearse at Public Storage on Frontage Road in Forest Park, Georgia, along with other Atlanta bands, almost could've, should've legends like Lost Cause, Asmodeus, and Fade to Winter. Hi, Chris and Bo. We all rehearsed our noisy art in preparation to play to our loyal fan base of about 12 people. Maybe 25 if we were lucky on a Saturday night. Sweating it out or freezing off our balls in the storage shed are some of my favorite memories. This is where my songwriting craft began to improve. It's where we started to grow as a band and where our drummer eventually learned to keep better time. Our songs got more complex in the arrangements, and my lyric writing started to take on a life of its own. We were heading someplace special, but like all good things, it had to come to an end. Our live shows were getting more attention, but I started to notice that I was drifting in a different direction from the other three guys in the band. I was discovering bands like Cathedral, Caius, and Crowbar, and I was really digging their sound. These bands pulled from other influences such as early Black Sabbath, which wasn't so common back then, and were presenting heavy music in a way that was new and refreshing to me. The other guys in the band were more excited about The Offspring, and at one point even wanted to start covering one of their songs, Self-Esteem. I could feel a shift in the current, and I didn't like where it was going. One Saturday night, we had the prime 9 p.m. slide at the Rec Room and played to one of our biggest crowds. We closed our show out with a brand new song that I had just written called Personal Demons. It was an epic song that had dynamics, tempo changes, and even a very Iron Maiden-esque change in the middle where I did some bass chord playing that I stole from Iron Maiden's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It brought the house down, and I couldn't have been happier or felt more alive. After our set, we were approached by a guy from another band who was bigger than ours, can't remember who to save my life, who wanted us to make a trek down to Florida to open for them at some club. As much as I loved playing live, there was something that was holding me back from wanting to hit the road on tour. Who am I kidding? It was one show in Florida. I knew the other guys in the band were going in a different direction musically, and I was feeling outnumbered. But I couldn't express my emotions. Instead, I argued with the band that it wasn't smart to do a show in Florida. We had nothing in the form of merch, no demo tapes, no shirts, nothing. I said that we would lose money. The band just stared at me, dumbfounded. We packed up our shit in silence, and we all went home. I had a feeling something would be brewing up after this exchange. At our next rehearsal, I could tell I was walking into a shitstorm. The guitarist looked at me and without hesitation said, "You are holding us back and you're just negative. This isn't your band anymore." In retrospect, he was probably right, but it still hurt to hear this. I packed my shit up, I told them I'd come back the next day to my gear, and in the biggest fuck you my 20-year-old self could muster, I left the band. They ended up getting another bassist, they did their Offspring covers, and much to my glee, come on, I was a bitter kid who had just left his band. They got knocked down to weeknight sets, and then they split up a few more shows later. When I left the band, I put my bass in the closet, and I didn't play music for a while. I was frustrated, angry, and guess what? I was jaded, but I learned a lot. I knew how to book gigs and how to promote a band. I learned that someone's word usually isn't worth shit unless it's signed on a dotted line. And most of all, I learned to stick to my guns. I learned to play and write from the heart and do exactly what I wanted to do, not what will make me popular. As for Rachel's Dead, while we may not have been the best band, it was a stepping stone for a musical journey that would last for another 2 decades and counting. In 2016, I reunited with my former bandmates. We congregated at the guitar player's house and caught up with each other. We shared 20 years of life stories and eventually ended up in the basement trying to remember some of those old songs. We sounded absolutely horrible, but we laughed. It was a lot of fun. And then we parted ways. I finally felt like I could close out this chapter with a smile. After all these years, that is something that not everyone gets to do. Okay, so that's it, everybody. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad Taxi was here to hear that essay. We've come a long way, baby. Come a long way. Does anybody have any other questions? I figured I'll open it up for some questions, and since there's a delay, I'll wait a few minutes to see if some come through. So feel free to start shooting away. Lily, I never got to see Trouble. Never got to see Trouble, but I really like Trouble. That's really cool. That I haven't thought about Trouble in years, actually. That's weird. It's funny they would say that. Sounds like when Marky Mark was kicked out of the band in Rockstar. Steel Dragon. That's it. All right, Mike wants to know, am I going to write another book? And the answer is yes, I am going to write another book. Hey, Ozzy Zig. Ladies and gentlemen, Ozzy Zig over here. This is my boy. Yes. Hey, what's going on? Hey, Ozzy, you're on the camera. You're on live. Live heaven. That's not live television, but anyway. Yes, I am going to write another book. Not quite sure what it's going to be yet. I'm still kind of... It might just be another collection of essays. Just random music essays. It won't be so autobiographical like this one. This book was really an important one for me to write. Writing this book gave me a lot of closure, and actually made me appreciate my life even through the hardships, and proved to me that, basically in a nutshell, I fell down and shit a lot, but I came out smelling like roses. Stones are roses, but anyway, that was a pun. Let me see. So so I'm gonna write another book. Not quite sure just yet, but the book bug totally bit me, and the fact that you all were so excited about it and have been so supportive, it's like, how could I not? It's inspiring. So, hey Don, no question, but thanks for sharing. Jojo, thanks for tuning in, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who tuned in today. So, all right, I'm gonna stay on for like maybe another 3 minutes or so, 2 minutes, and just see if anyone has a question to get popped. So. And for those of you who are asking where to get the book, like I said, if you send me a message on Facebook, I've got some books here that I was originally going to sell at the book signing, but I've got hard copies here, so feel free to message me on Facebook and tell me you want one. I've got probably about 20 copies here, so I've got plenty to sell. They're $15, that includes shipping, and especially with all the social distancing right now, I will pack it up by wearing gloves and send it off to you. Okay, well look, I'm going to close it up for now. Thank you so much. Oh, my favorite Kiss album, Creatures of the Night. Creatures of the Night, best Kiss album. Not just my favorite, but it's the best Kiss album. It's the best Kiss album. James, I have to tell you, Creatures of the Night is the best Kiss album. That was my Gene Simmons. That was pretty bad. So anyway, all right, folks, I'm going to sign off. And thank y'all so much for being a part of this cool day. There was a lot of people here, and I really appreciate it. And again, if you want a book, send me a message, and I will get one off to you. I'll even sign it and decrease the value. So, all right, thank y'all so much. Appreciate it. See you on the other side. Southeast of Heaven, a metalhead's journey. Thank you.